Sup gamers, Rainy Potato here to rank all the skills on the Jester. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to subscribe, and check out my Patreon in the description for early access to my upcoming videos. Chop is his base single target melee attack, dealing 6 to 12 damage, 6 to 16 on upgrade, with a 75% chance to blind Leper on use, 60% on upgrade. This skill is heavily boosted by his damage path Tempest, nerfed by Poet, and mixed with meme path Monarch. The blind is obviously obnoxious and the wide damage range is frustrating, along with of course fairly restrictive targeting, but the high top end and the variety of ways to both mitigate blind, combos and Tempest debuff resist, and scale him with modifiers and tokens, which he self-generates, makes this actually one of the easier and more straightforward nukes in the game with no cooldown. I really struggle to find ways to connect with Chop because of this, making this powerful in one-tapping trash mobs and as a boss nuker alike. Easy universal tier, but not OP because of the aforementioned downsides. Purge is a rank 1 to rank 1 melee attack, dealing 2 to 4 damage, 3 to 5 on upgrade, applying a knockback of 3, and clearing corpses. This is a much more of a situational equip. It's the weakest of the corpse clears in my opinions because the utility is the knockback, which is sort of mitigated with the corpse clear. There are a few cases where knockback is good, a handful of enemies are heavily debuffed in rank 4, but of course it's nowhere near guaranteed and does nothing else. Most useful in moving books in the librarian fight. Certainly a perfect fit for the solid tier though. Withstand is a self buff usable from the front 3 that adds 2 taunt and 2 block tokens, block plus on upgrade, as well as 15% to DOT and move resists, 25% on upgrade. You also generate a block token for the subsequent 3 rounds. It has a use limit of 2 and a cooldown of 3. With the highest base HP in the game, any taunt for the Leper is good. And of course you amplify this with block tokens and DOT resists on a hero fairly susceptible to dots. The utility of the skill is widely variable depending on whether you're running DPS Leper or tank. It's an auto-equip and open for tanks, but not often for DPS since you have other necessary setup. This keeps it out of the universal tier, but it is undoubtedly a solid skill, easily topping Purge. Solemnity is a self-heal, usable from the front 2 ranks, healing 2 stress, 3 on upgrade, along with a 33% heal, 50% on upgrade, to HP if below the 33% threshold. It has a use limit of 2. The best self-sustained skill in the game, especially with buffed Poet. The HP and stress heal combo lets you escape death's door and stave off dangerous meltdowns in one press of the button. There's never a reason to not equip this elite skill. It can be a pure stress heal without a threshold in the trash mobs if you have time to stall. It makes him near unkillable as a tank, and the high base healing in conjunction with Poet can even make this viable against the eyeball and his disgusting debuff. No question it's in the OP tier, and among the best skills in the game, frankly, for survivability alone. Reflection is a self buff usable from the front 2 ranks. It clears blind and combo, and removes 1 stress, 2 on upgrade. The upgrade also adds 20% debuff resistance and eliminates the 1 turn cooldown. Another stress heal with no threshold, another point in Leper's favor as an elite tank able to absorb blows. It is a bit unexciting to spend a turn to just clear blind, especially since with Tempest it's generally better to just swing on blind with your debuff resist, but sometimes it's necessary. The upgrade gets a decent glow up though, further boosting your debuff resist and removing 2 whole stress with no cooldown. Often you'll want to be using other buffs with damage Leper, and this is mostly unnecessary with tank except as a pure stress heal, but it still goes on most bars and just slips into the universally useful tier, because when it's great, and it's never outright bad. Hue is his front row AoE, usable from the front 2 ranks, dealing 3 to 7 damage, 49 on upgrade. It has the same blind on use mechanic as Chop does, and likewise will also ignore blind on combo. Notably only one of the targets needs combo and then you can smack both. The biggest problem with this skill is it doesn't get boosted like Chop, and of course the lower base damage makes it much slower scaling. In an action economy game like DD2, in most fights it's far superior to take a big swing on one target rather than spreading damage. Of course being able to double death's door is nice when it happens, but to do that with this skill you'll either need to be facing extreme trash mobs or work in tandem with an ally, an inferior option to single target damage. If Tempest read plus 33% melee damage instead of only Chop, this might be great, but for now I never put it on my bar. Just barely slips into the solid tier. Revenge is a self buff usable from any rank, giving Leper 2 vuln, 1 on upgrade, by giving him a buff where he will generate a strength token on turn start for the subsequent 3 turns. On upgrade, he also removes weak and has a 15% chance of also gaining crit on turn start. It's notable that the Vaughn can be resisted, making this absolutely stellar for Tempest. As we covered before, the wide base damage range for Chop is well structured to accommodate your strength and crit, making this an easy plus EV play in any fight you expect to last more than a couple rounds. Even in trash mobs, this isn't a bad button press, letting you set up your combos and clear tokens to allow for easy one-hit swings. It's absolutely mandatory to getting the most out of your boss runs, even near one-hitting some of them with full setup. Even on Poet, it's equipable late game as a fair way to transition to DPS if necessary. Perfect companion to Tempest Chop. I put it in the universally useful tier just behind Chop. Intimidate is usable only from rank 1 to any rank, doing 1 to 2 damage, 2 to 3 on upgrade, and giving Leper 2 taunt tokens, and applying 2 weak tokens to the target. On upgrade, it also ignores and removes stealth. This is one of the most powerful tanking skills in the game, and is also Leper's only ability with range to proc Death's Door in the backline. The obvious downsides are it's only usable from rank 1, so it does limit some comps, as well as general Leper downsides like the combat start blind and his low speed, making this skill a general non-factor early in combats. Tougher enemies as well tend to have higher debuff resist, which makes this skill relatively weaker in the most important fights in the game. Still, this is a required tank equip and has some usage in other contexts, and certainly slots in the universally useful tier, probably behind Revenge for me. Ruin is a self-buff usable from the front 3 ranks and gives Leper a buff that increases his damage by 20% each time he takes damage for the next 3 turns. On upgrade, this gives him 2 bleed, which will give him additional Ruin proc each turn. It has a use limit of 2 and a cooldown of 3. This skill is the highest potential scaling in the game, but also a bit unreliable and hard to master exactly when you have to utilize your Ruin before the damage disappears. These complications make it exclusively a boss equip, and even then, oftentimes the simple revenge spam chop strategy does more damage. This is best utilized with a Jester who can cheese the cooldown and keep the Ruin up with Encore. Otherwise, you're looking at a much longer and more precise setup and getting maybe 1 opportunity for a giant swing. It's certainly not bad and can beat a boss on its own in the right scenario, but I can't put it any higher than the bottom of the solid tier. Break is a front row to front row single target melee attack, doing 4 to 7 damage, 4 to 10 on upgrade. It has the same self-blind mechanic as Chop and Hugh, but only the upgrade ignores blind with combo. It also ignores and removes all block. This is dumb and bad and stupid, and I'm not sure if it's ever been unironically equipped before. There's literally no reason why this mediocre damage skill needs to have a blind punishment simply to remove block. And the ignore block is irrelevant usually because Chop itself usually does more damage than this through the block anyways. A very unfunny meme. This stinker needs to stay off your bar and stay in the trash tier. Bash is a front row to front row single target melee attack, doing 2 to 4 damage, 3 to 5 on upgrade, while also applying daze and immobilize. This also immobilizes Leper, and on upgrade will apply combo. This is actually a pretty solid equip now that double daze gives stun. It's still a bit slow compared to just DPS, and on a tank build you'd normally rather just Intimidate, but there are stun comps you can build that should work fine, at least against normal mobs. The big issue with stun in this game, of course, is the toughest mobs and bosses you face will generally be stun resistant, so even daze is a pretty mediocre effect. This also has utility specifically against the Harvest Child and is a standard equip in that fight with any build. It's not a bad skill, but still mostly unexciting. It's good enough for the solid tier, just behind Withstand. Overall, the Leper does 2 roles, DPS and tank, relatively well and has a well-rounded kit for both builds. He really shines with his self-sustain through most runs and can turn it on the end game and become top DPS with just his own kit. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe and join my Patreon or become a YouTube member for early access to my upcoming videos.